Welcome back to Horns High Studios for another episode of 666 Seconds of Murder. That means each one of these is less than 666 seconds or 11 minutes and 6 seconds. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. We're talking about the Idaho 4 and the issue of the sorority sisters. Keep in mind with all my videos, these are for informational purposes only. Just my speculations and opinions. That's all it is. So I'm not saying anybody's guilty of anything. That's for a court of law to decide. Now, if you look up the word sorority, it's simply defined as a club of women. Now, it got me thinking when I did that last video on Jack Decor, and I broke his name down as Jack of Hearts, and that was interesting. And now we got clubs. So are we talking about playing cards, or do we mean clubs as in weapons? So it got me really thinking about this. Now, we've been looking at this crime like most people do. We make assumptions. It's natural. We profile, despite the negative connotations associated with that word. It's common sense to not start looking into area nursing homes to solve a crime involving a person that stole a woman's purse and ran away from the police. So it's just natural to do that. Now, we assume that the person or persons that did the heinous acts in this case were men. It's natural to think that, I think. Men are much more common to commit violent acts, especially ones like this. But what if the crimes were carried out by the sorority sisters? Let's think outside the box and explore that option just for a few minutes. Now, we always hear the Freemasons brought up when the subject of evil fraternities comes up. Many believe that it was Freemasonry that gave way to fraternities, and I would agree with that. Isaac Jordan was one of the founding members of the Sigma Chi fraternity in the 1800s, and he was a Freemason. There have been lots of similarities when it comes to keeping secrets between the two organizations. They're fraternal. Now, the female version of the Freemasons is known as the Eastern Star. It's very similar. So the female version of the fraternity is, of course, the sorority. And the parallels between the fraternities, sororities, and the Freemasons and Eastern Star is rather interesting. But it's that vow of silence that ties them all together, I think. It makes them look at them differently, in this case especially. We know that the victims in this crime were members of a fraternity or sorority. Ethan was Sigma Chi, Kaylee was Alpha Phi, and Xana and Maddie were members of the Pi Beta Phi or the Pi Phis. Brittany was also a Pi Phi, but Dylan seemed to hang out with them, but don't believe she was a full-fledged member of the organization. So what would the sorority sisters have against these victims? Well, I've heard stories about Maddie and the accusations that she wasn't really the nicest person and known to be a bully. And I wonder if that's why Kaylee moved out. And maybe that's what caused what some say was a little bit of a rift between the two of them. Now, there's also the case of Hannah Clear, who died in February of 2022, what from the police believe was officially an overdose of over-the-counter sleeping medications. She was in the same dorm as Maddie and apparently endured quite a bit of bullying from Maddie and her friends. She wasn't as conventionally beautiful as Maddie and her group of friends and preferred studying more than partying. So it's a very, very sad story. When you look at the other suspicious hazing-related deaths that occurred on the University of Idaho campus, it seems that the Greek frats and sororities are part of a culture that is centered on drinking alcohol and using recreational drugs to the excess. And if any of their members get in any sort of trouble or accusations of hazing were brought up, they circle the wagons and protect their own at all costs. Now, the fraternities and sororities have a code that clearly states if there is a death of any of the members, they should call the fraternity attorney first and not contact the person's family. They're told not to talk to the media or anyone outside the organization. We know Sigma Chi said that there were no cameras anywhere on the property. That's one easy way to avoid any misdeeds getting caught on camera. We know how important the Greeks are to the University of Idaho. Their members donate a lot of money to the school, and they don't disclose how much they get from them. We know that Scott Green, Chief Fry, William Thompson, Ann Taylor, and Judge are all members of fraternities and sororities. They're also all alumni of the University of Idaho. With the university being so dependent on the Greeks, it's no wonder that they didn't investigate them the way they probably should have in this case. We know that two of the victims, Ethan and Xana, were at a party at Sigma Chi the night before, and that a fight broke out between Ethan and David Loach, and Xana broke it up, and then they left. But we don't know much more than that, and their time is somewhat unaccounted for between 9 and 1:45 a.m. The sad thing is that Ethan's brother, Hunter, and sister Maisie were both at that party, and we would assume that they've got some information that might shed some light on this. But with the gag order in place, that's probably why they're not saying anything. What if the rumor that Maddie flushed some products down the toilet, coupled with the fact that she insulted David Loach at a Sigma Chi party the night before the incident, was what doomed her that day? Could there have been multiple people who wanted to exact revenge, and maybe they used the sorority sisters to carry out their heinous crime? Was Maddie the target in here instead of Kaylee, like we've been led to believe? Maybe someone wanted to take care of Maddie and was surprised to find Kaylee in the same bed. Could this have started out as one crime that turned into 4 because others were alerted to the commotion in Maddie's room? Maybe the attacker or attackers ran into Ethan and Xana in the second-floor living room and had to eliminate them before leaving. In this scenario, I think Dylan and Bethany could have been accomplices on the inside. Like I've stated in my lambs to the slaughter theory, it's very feasible to think that they were the ones to provide the inside information needed to carry out this crime, and for that reason they were spared. Bethany would be bound to silence due to her allegiance to the Pi Beta Phi sorority. Dylan might have been scared into silence, knowing that if she told police what really happened, she would be implicating herself. Maybe the sororities and fraternities banded together to carry this out. We know there were 4 people running from the house and toward Sigma Chi just after 3 a.m. in that police body cam video at the band field. Were they part of the group that carried this out? Maybe the police at the band field were lookouts to keep people away from the house while all this went down. I think it's very possible that they were all involved in some way, but the sorority angle was not one I really considered before, but I do wonder if they had more involvement. And if you want to believe WSU Kim's account, the sororities were all told long before 911 was called at 11:58 a.m. But what was their role beyond that? I'd love to hear from you guys and what you've got to say about this. Do you think the sororities might have played more of a role in these crimes than we originally considered? I do want to say thank you to everybody in the Horns High Club. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate that support. And whether you're a member or not, I appreciate you guys being here and watching these videos. And we'll see you again in another episode of 666 Seconds of Murder.